Perhaps the most significant and enduring contribution to the idea of governing the world lies with international organisations. They're an integral part of the modern international system and have been for over 150 years. But are they a means of enabling the system to function more satisfactorily, or a means of transforming international relations? The two preeminent international organisations, the League of Nations and the United Nations, are a mix of both pragmatic statecraft and idealism. They were designed to preserve the system of sovereign states, yet aim at higher political goals of peace and justice. Each was an attempt to transform international relations in response to devastating world wars. International organisations grew out of 19th century developments in technology, particularly communication and industrialisation, and the challenges and opportunities they created for states. New organisations emerged, whose business were the international relations not monopolised by diplomats and foreign ministers. Technical experts, specialists and professionals working to facilitate governance of communications and transport in an age of industrial interdependence formed a range of international organisations. Among the earliest were the International Telegraphic Union of 1865, the Universal Postal Union of 1874, and the International Bureau of Weights and Measures in 1875. Others would follow in the areas of health and agriculture before the League of Nations was formed in 1919. International relations had long experienced multilateral diplomacy, but it was ad hoc and improvised rather than regular and institutionalised, and often reflected the ephemeral interests of great powers rather than widely shared rules. Late in the 19th century, a conscious effort was made to agree such shared rules. The Hague Conferences of 1899 and 1907 were convened to elaborate general principles that would govern war and make it less inhumane. Despite the limitations and persistent Eurocentrism of the Hague Conferences, they established an enduring commitment among states, both great and small, to establish permanent instruments and institutions for the management of international relations. Upon this basis, the League of Nations and, after it collapsed at the commencement of World War II, the United Nations were established. At discussions held at Dumbarton Oaks in Washington in August 1944, the Soviets, British and Americans began hammering out a blueprint for a more robust international organisation. Representatives of 50 states gathered at San Francisco in April 1945, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to defend human rights, justice and international law, and to promote social welfare and freedom. The charter drafted at San Francisco gave rise to 6 principal organs: the Security Council, the General Assembly, Economic and Social Council, International Court of Justice, the Trusteeship Council, and the Secretariat. The Charter's overarching purpose is to maintain international peace and security, a phrase repeated throughout the Charter. It adopted collective security as its approach to peace. This purpose was based on the foundational principle of sovereign equality. All states, irrespective of their strength or weakness, youth or maturity, were legally equal. Relatedly, the Charter enshrined the principle of non-intervention and prohibition on the use of force, except in self-defence and when the UN sanctions it. The UN was designed to provide a universal framework for the regulation of international relations. It set out to provide a forum for the facilitation of regular consultation and negotiation, and to promote cooperation and collective action in the face of global challenges. Central to its viability would be great power unity. To accommodate great power responsibility, the drafters of the UN Charter conferred on the Big Five permanent seats in the newly formed Security Council. These states also held a veto power in that decision-making body. The veto was used often by the two superpowers during the Cold War to stymie resolutions that might favour the other's geopolitical interests. In the 1990s, the UN embarked on a series of global governance initiatives that would have been impossible during the bipolar rivalry of the Cold War. These include an expansion in peacekeeping operations and post-conflict peacebuilding efforts, the development of the Millennium Development Goals, and a framework convention on climate change. There were, of course, failures, including UN inaction during the Rwandan genocide and Bosnian ethnic cleansing. The UN has provided a durable institutional framework for great and small powers to communicate, negotiate and deliberate on matters of global concern. Member states are legally equal, though it would be naive to believe that power is absent or redundant at the UN. The UN doesn't exist in isolation of the power relations outside its walls. Neither does it simply replicate those relations. Most importantly, the UN acts as a structure to legitimate principles, rules, norms and decisions governing the international system. It's true, as Michael Barnett and Martha Finnemore argue, that these may favour the powerful, but they may also reflect universal interests, which might enable the system to function better by reforming international relations.